So with no further ado, I'm going to turn this program over to Jeanine Phillips. Let's give her a warm Pachyderm Club welcome.
Good afternoon. I am thrilled to be here. Thank you so much for the invitation to speak today. Again, I'm Jeanine Phillips, Executive Director of the Phillips Fundamental Learning Center. This is Gretchen Andeel on the screen with me. Gretchen was co-founder of Fundamental Learning Center. She was the one who grabbed me by the shoulders and told me that I was going to have to go to Dallas, Texas to learn how to save my dyslexic son's life. So I'll be forever grateful to Gretchen. Gretchen and I decided, I went to Dallas in, I always have to think about this, 1992 for Cooper to help him. And I came back and Gretchen joined me in just private instruction around Wichita for about 10 years. And then we decided we needed to start a training center. So we got together, we formed our nonprofit in 2000, and then opened our doors in 3,000 square feet in Park Lane Shopping Center. So I've been doing this a very, very long time. And what I will tell you is when Gretchen first told me this and I started pursuing with the school system, what can I do to identify Cooper with dyslexia? Clear back in 92, and they said, we don't recognize dyslexia, but when you find out what to do, let us know. So that was how my journey began. I didn't really understand not recognizing dyslexia. And when I had gone to Dallas, it's the mecca for dyslexia. So I was really surprised and just kind of decide, well, I don't know what I don't know. So just kept working with kids individually and privately. I was probably in 5 different school systems, and at that time the schools let me in to work with the kids an hour a day, 3 times a week, or 2 days a week, whatever worked out. So that was how I started, and it was out of parents kind of saying, we need more opportunities. I want to get the training that Gretchen and I decided to co-found Fundamental Learning Center. So this is our new building. We moved from Park Lane Shopping Center to 21st and really close to Grove, Opportunity Drive. We were there for about 6 years, and as we were there, we decided we needed a building designed specifically for what we did. And it's complex what we do, and I will give you a tour here in a minute, but we entered into a capital campaign right before COVID. We raised the money we needed, and then COVID came. So that stalled us for about 2 years as costs went up, skyrocket costs on the building itself. And we were at that point where we were ready to order steel for the building. Once you order steel for the building, you're committed. So it was a scramble to continue to raise the money. We cut down on as much as we could from the original architectural design, but in the end, we made it and were able to open in October of 2014. Gretchen walked beside me for all those years, clear up until July 4th of 2023, just before we opened the building. She died of cancer on July 4th, so she was not able to be there for the grand opening. But I will tell you, I feel her presence every day. I feel her right here beside me right now. She was somebody who guided you not only guided you, but she told you what to do, and you didn't argue with her. So I was any of you who knew her understand that. A beautiful, kind, loving woman who absolutely loved children. So I was very blessed to have met her. I prepared a lot of this talk for the Department of Education and delivered this, I think, about 2 weeks ago. So at the time, I went around and I asked everybody on our staff, when did you train in the specialized program we do, and how long have you been doing it? And that's what you'll see at the bottom. I was shocked. We have 40 staff members, and combined they have 455 years of experience in assessing children with dyslexia, teaching children to read, or teaching teachers how to read. So that blew my mind. I thought, wow, that's crazy. I need to keep this slide up everywhere I go. It's taken a village to move to the place where we are today, without a doubt. And that village was created by parents and educators who found out their children were dyslexic. This is our mission. We are in the process of a 10-year strategy plan, of which we're focused on the first 5 right now. So this is a newly developed mission for us. And again, it basically talks about, and for the most part, that last line, together we champion systemic change to ensure that literacy is a right, not a privilege, for all children. So that's kind of where this mission is different than our past mission, and this is how we feel strongly about what we do. What I've learned over time is that if you know how to teach a child with dyslexia how to read, you can teach anybody how to read. It's critical information that I received in Dallas, Texas, to teach Cooper that is still absolutely what we know, the root to what is called the science of reading today, which is where we're all coming back to. I searched far and wide for a picture that reminded me of me in 3rd grade. And this was the picture I found. This is this child's face, this child's body posture was me. I knew by 3rd grade I couldn't read. I knew I could read a few words. I had been taught by Dick and Jane. Dick and Jane, if you remember, were cards, had a picture. You were to memorize those words. When the picture disappeared, I had no idea. But I will tell you, Mary Stuckey, who sat beside me, knew. So I waited for Mary Stuckey to just barely start identifying those words, and right away I could say them. So I knew my teacher didn't know I couldn't read. But it was my dad who figured out I couldn't read. He was dean of business at Wichita State University at the time, Larry Jones. My dad had gone, obviously, over to the education department, and he had said, my daughter is really struggling to read. He would put me on his lap and read books to me and point out words, and I couldn't read them. So I know what they told him to do is put her on your lap and read the same book every night to her, and she'll figure out how to read. So he did that, and within 6 weeks, I could read. It was the same book, right? So one day, I'm reading the book, and I miss a word, and he said, what is that word? He pointed at it. He said, you don't know it, do you? And I said, I just kind of froze. I didn't want to tell him I didn't know that word, and I was trying to go back to the beginning of the book and get to where I was, because I had memorized it by the pictures, but also by the way the book went through the words. So again, he pointed at the word and he said, H-A-T spells hat. Turns the page, H-A-T spells hat. My dad had the patience. He had amazing patience. And this sounds like he didn't. And yeah, I think he didn't know what to do. So turn the page clear through the book. Every time pointed to the word hat and said H-A-T spells hat. You know the book I was asked to read? Who knows? Cat, huh? Cat in the Hat was the book. So by the time he hit the last H-A-T spells hat, I felt so stupid. I knew my letter names. I did not know those letters had sounds that went with them. So that was when he called my third grade teacher, and he said she can't read, and she said, well, luckily I tutor kids after school, so he signed me up. I will tell you, it was in the fall of my third grade year. I will never forget it. It was after school. I looked out of a very hot classroom. There was no air conditioning back then. I was watching all the kids play kickball. That was my deal, you guys. I was the queen of kickball. But no, I was sitting here with this teacher, and she was going to teach me to learn. So I will tell you, I was not real happy about it that first night, or first afternoon. But she did two things. She picked up an acrylic box. She blew the dust off of it into my face, and she said, I haven't had a student like you in years. I thought, oh, great, yay. But then she smiled, and she opened up the box, and inside were the most beautiful etched letters in acrylic, all different pastel colors. And they spoke magic to me. I was artistic. I loved working in clay and painting and doing all those things, so this spoke to me. What she had me do was trace those letters. They were all capitals, but the etching was all different on them. So she taught me the name of the letter and how it connected to the sound and how to write it by just tracing it and following it on the etched letters. So that year, the second thing she did is she said, what do you like to think about? I said, horses. I love horses. And she said, okay. And so what she did is she surrounded me with horse books, Misty of Chincoteague, Stormy of Chincoteague. Those books absolutely motivated me to start to learn to read. So by the end of third grade, I was reading, not quite third grade level, but probably second, 2.5. And that was that. That was the end. We moved out to Valley Center. In fifth grade, I knew when I hit Valley Center, I was not nearly at a fifth grade reading level. That was where I found really great friends who and a lot of you would call it cheating back then. I didn't call it cheating. I called it the way I learned. They would share with me, they would read to me, the words got bigger, the places that they took me were more interesting all the time by doing that for me. I started study hours after school, and there were about 5 of us, but I hand chose them so they could get me through all the subjects. So that got me through basically all the way through college. I went to KU, wanted to do occupational therapy. Vocabulary was way too hard, so basically I came back to Wichita, failing at KU. My dad said, okay, now you gotta go to work. I'm done paying for college, but I'll pay some of it when you go back, but you need to work. So I did, and that was a blessing. I took 6 hours a semester, and I could handle that. So I was 6 years getting to the point where I could basically, in my last class, graduate with an elementary ed degree. And last night at class, I was just sharing this at my table. The professor of my literacy class said he had an assessment for dyslexia. And all of us in our class looked at each other. We had never heard that word before, and he noticed it. So he said, okay, let's take it. Let's go through the experience. It was timed. Turn it over. When the timer goes off, flip it over. So I did, started taking it. Timer went off. I look up. Everybody else is done. I glance back down. I'm halfway done. And right then, I just kind of turned it back over. I was at the back of the class, and he said, let's talk about this experience, and let's start with you. And I mean, the floor, you guys, just went out from under me. I was with my peers, as we are by the time we're ready to graduate. And everybody, and I couldn't even remember that word he said. I couldn't pronounce it. So I sat there, and I'm wondering, why did he choose me? And all he said to me was, you are obviously dyslexic. That was the only words he said. So I sat there till the end of class, and then everybody left, and I approached him, and I said, so I've never heard that word. I don't even know what you're talking about. He said, I'm sorry. I was sure you knew. You are so smart, you can answer any question. But I said, how did you know? He said, your writing is that of a second grader. When you can't read, or read at a much lower level, your writing is going to be way behind. So, and I know we didn't have AI. We didn't have anything on computers back then. All you had to do was write it out longhand, and all I did every time I turned it in was pray for at least a C. So I knew. So I left that class, graduated the next week. I did ask him, what does this mean for my future? And he said, you're going to be fine. I checked your grade point average, and you have a 4.0. Yeah, I'm like, still. I don't know how to teach kids how to read, though, obviously. We didn't learn how. So that took me to my assignment at Adams Elementary. That's where I started my first assignment, first grade. And I walked in the classroom, nothing, no curriculum. So I went to the principal and I said, where's the literacy curriculum or math? He said, where's your curriculum? I said, you don't get curriculum in college, what? He said, well, you're lucky I have a 5th grade assignment. So he moved me to 5th grade, and he said, you don't have to be able to teach kids in 5th grade. They come reading. No, they don't. No, they don't. And that was my first big aha, that half my kids in 5th grade couldn't read. But I wasn't responsible for teaching them. So I survived that year. So that was kind of my introduction to dyslexia. It was one word spoken in my last night of class. So that's kind of a quick time frame there. I graduated in 1973 from high school, lowest SAT at Heights High, but somehow I got into KU. Obviously, I shouldn't have. So again, as I go through, now I go back to Cooper. This was Cooper, my youngest. I have 2 boys, 2 years apart. And this was the summer after the most miserable kindergarten year ever. We had moved to Colorado, outside of Denver, and this was in the summertime, and a new kid. Over the course of kindergarten, he had lost 12 pounds, was sick with inside of the school every day. We didn't know what was going on. The teacher was so unkind to him. She didn't understand at all. We were moving back to Wichita out at the end of this summer, so I finally saw my child again at the end of his kindergarten year this summer. And as I always say, and he was the mess that you see right here. This is why I just couldn't figure out kindergarten for him. He was creative, he was smart, he was mature, he was tall, but it was misery. What I did know about him was he spoke words funny. His speech language was different from other children and his brother. I filled his baby book with words like aminal, Pusketty, buffer flea. We knew what he was saying, and they were multi-syllabic words, but he would mess the sounds up. That's all I could kind of tie to. So we went to, immediately after moving to Wichita, I started worrying about this, and I said something to a teacher at, this was at Price Elementary, the reading specialist, and she said, let me look at this, let me call you. The second day of school, she called me and she said, have you seen a psychologist, an educational psychologist? I said, no, I've seen 14 other medical professionals, but not a educational psychologist. She said, if I were you, I would run. I said, where do I go? So she knew of somebody who had just moved here to Wichita from Florida State University. Florida State was one of the leading study centers for dyslexia. This educational psychologist pulled my husband and I into the room within about 20 minutes, and he said, your child is profoundly dyslexic. You're not going to find any services for him in Kansas. I didn't really dig into that, but this is how I met Gretchen, who knew what to do. When I asked the schools, they said, again, if you find something, we'll do it, but you know, we don't have any answers for you. So it was in Dallas, Texas, where I first learned, and the first night of class blew my mind. But I do need to back up, because as soon as that doctor said Cooper was profoundly dyslexic, that was the second time I had ever heard that word. Second time. I was stunned, and I said, is it hereditary? And he said, yes, it's very hereditary. So it was in Texas where I learned the gene that is the contributor, that it's a language processing issue. How many of you think when I say dyslexia that I read backwards or see backwards? How many of you usually? Yeah, a lot of people think that. And I remember when somebody said that to me, how cool you read backwards. I'm like, I don't read backwards. I see the exact same thing you see. But I didn't know. I didn't know what was happening. So again, this was a real important discovery for me to make with Cooper and to understand other children. So I'm going to kind of, as I'm doing this, I'm running through kind of a timeline from Cooper then, and starting Fundamental Learning Center with Gretchen, and outgrowing where we were in Park Lane. We expanded 3 times. So we outgrew Park Lane. We moved over to 21st Street into the Cessna building. We just leased that space. We were looking for something to do. We refurbished it and thought maybe this is the place. And the second year we were there, a child found a loaded gun in the parking lot. Picked it up, threw it at the teacher, and that was out on the playground. It had no safety on it. It was rusted. We were so lucky. That was the day, it was an emergency board meeting, and we said, you know what, we need to find what we're going to do next, and we need to do it quickly. We had already begun to explore some thinking about architecture and a building. At this time, I was in a board meeting, and we were talking about the pushback we were getting with getting dyslexia recognized. And my dad was on the board. He was chair of finance, and he opened up and he said in a meeting, if we find the Frank Lloyd Wright plan and we build it, they will come. And I'm like, the Frank Lloyd Wright plan from WSU? And he said, there was a sister building to the Corbin Center that was called Building B, and it had never been built. 3 weeks later, my dad had back surgery and did not survive. It set our whole board, our whole organization just up in smoke for about 2 years as we tried to regain where we were. So I'd been going to Topeka asking to please the board to please identify dyslexia and let's move forward. I'd done it for, at this point, 14 years. I'd been going there, and it was the 7th year after Dad passed. I was driving back, and I thought, I'm going to see if I can find the plans. So I called my mom when I got back, and I said, Mom, did you know about a Frank Lloyd Wright plan? And she said, of course I did, honey. I was like, oh, you're kidding. So I said, where is it? She said, I don't know. But she said, Dean Powell and your dad and I traveled all around the country talking to Frank Lloyd Wright about his buildings. So I said, is there anybody you know who might know? She said, Roger Lowe. And I did not know Roger at this time. How many of you know Roger Lowe? Was over Wichita State University. He took over my dad's position. So she called him, he called me. He said, again, who are you? And I said, Larry Jones's daughter. And he said, what do you want? I said, I am looking for some plans. He said, I think I know where they are. Let me call you back. He called me back in 15 minutes. He said, if you can be at WSU tomorrow, I'll have the plans laid out for you. These were the plans. However, it's two-story. This was the Juvenile Cultural Center Frank Lloyd Wright designed. And when I saw the plan, I knew. I knew Frank Lloyd Wright. He had put together a perfect school design for children with dyslexia. This was designed for kindergarten, first, second graders, and the idea was they went to the subject that turned them on the most first thing in the day. And for both my boys, that would have been science, but what do we teach first? We teach reading. So I had to push them, drag them crying into the building. And I thought Frank Lloyd Wright got it. So that started this whole really board journey that we went on. And this would have been, this plan was designed in 1955. WSU would have taken it on about 1965-ish, but we were way later than that. So with that, finding the plans, knowing we wanted to do this, the child finding the gun in the parking lot sent us on a fast track. I reached out to architectural firms across town and met Craig Rhodes with GLMV. Craig was absolutely loved. Sorry, I keep doing this, I don't know why. Loved Frank Lloyd Wright. He'd gone all over the country looking at designs. And when he pulled up Falling Water, and he showed me this design, and he said, let's talk about the elements, and let's talk about that kind of teardrop-shaped building, and how do we do this? So from that minute on, Craig and I met on a weekly basis, talking about all aspects of the building where we are today. So I'm going to give you a quick tour, and I invite any of you to come out anytime. And I'll kind of point out some of the aspects of Frank Lloyd Wright. I learned so much, and what is really fun now is the EB Construction was our construction group. This has now won a national building award. We got to go to Ohio and receive that award, and it was just amazing. Somebody asked me yesterday, how many buildings are there that do what you do like this in the world? I said, one. And that was the beauty of a Frank Lloyd Wright design. There will never be another one. So as you walk in, I will tell you the round center is a big thing for Frank Lloyd Wright. Kind of century two, that was Frank Lloyd Wright's a family member who designed Century 2. He didn't do it himself, but that was, we call it the hug, the place that everybody walks in, has a fireplace there in the middle of the entryway. The lines you see, very Frank Lloyd Wright. He raises your eye up, he takes your eye down as you enter a room or enter the building. So parents park right here in the parking lot and walk down under, we call that the angel wing, to enter into the building. We opened the building, I've kind of put little timestamps in the bottom, in 2023. So we moved we'll celebrate just 2 years this October. This is where you enter. This is our assessment area. We will assess about 230 to 50 children this year. And then on the other side of the fireplace is the recognition, the capital campaign recognition, which is our butterfly. Our butterfly was the very first thing that a marketing group and I came up with. When the marketer said to me, "What do you think about when you think about dyslexia in your teaching?" And I said, "I think about that caterpillar who creates a cocoon and then comes out and flies away." So that's where the butterfly came from. So you will see it's, the image that we use. Since 2001, we have assessed 4,390, actually more. There are a few this week that walked in, children. We also have a neuropsychologist who does an official evaluation for dyslexia. She's one of the few in Kansas who actually leases a room from us. This is I will say the most important thing we do that Gretchen and I came up with years ago, and that's teacher training, teacher and parent training. We realized that we could only work with so many children if we did after-school tutoring programs. So we decided right away, we knew we had to teach teachers how to teach children. So this is the area that we teach in. This is half of the room. We have a collapsible wall, which creates two different areas where we can teach, or we can collapse that wall and have lectures or summits. I will tell you, we loan this out to, has the most incredible technology system in it, which I don't touch. Like I said, I don't mess with that. But we are teaching all around the world now, so what happens is we must we must have people local, then we'll add those into that class. It's part of our accreditation. We must do it face-to-face. So anybody joining us from somewhere else in the world has to join us on Central Daylight Time. So they might start our class at 2 in the morning and end whenever they do, but they must be face-to-face with another group of individuals. To date, I just shared this, again, the numbers that I pulled up for the State Board of Ed presentation. Qualified instructors must work with children 2,300 private hours before they can stand up in front of a group of teachers and tell them how this program works and mentor those teachers. So part of our accreditation, very rigorous, very specific. Since we opened, we've certified 242 what we call language therapists. This is also rigorous. It takes 3 years to complete our training. You must start working with kids. It's hard to train those individuals in a state where dyslexia is not really recognized or allowed to be really talked about until recently, really about 2 years ago. We have a new area called CALPS, or practitioners, which just started 2 years ago. So we've trained 162 as practitioners. Then all the other dyslexia-focused lectures and conferences, which we do in our building, or we may do them at other sites as well. Then early childhood focus programs, that's our focus, is early childhood. So we've had 2,529 individuals come in for those courses and classes. So our second was to empower the children, and we started a school in 2016 when we moved over to 21st Street, as I said. Realizing right away we needed to move the school. We started with 7 boys and 3 girls, and then today have grown to 71 children who now attend. They start young. This is a teaching laboratory school for parents and educators to come and see what great education is for young children. We start with 5-year-olds, and they must exit by middle school. So our job is to teach them to read, write, and spell as proficiently as we can by 5th grade. And then we take a team into the schools, sometimes, rarely though, with IEPs. Most of the time it's just 504 plans to make sure that these kids are accommodated. So that is the second part, well, really the third if you count the assessment center. So Rolph Literacy Academy, that is named for Dee and Daryl Rolph. They came to me years ago asking questions about their son Cody, and had never heard the word dyslexia. Yet Cody was a grown young man at that time. And so Dee has been walking beside us since that time. This is the Rolph Literacy Academy wing. Those big classrooms that surrounded Frank Lloyd Wright's tear shape are the classes to the left of the picture as the kids are walking down the hall. To the right, and you see it right here through this window, are our small reading literacy classrooms. Kids are grouped within 2 years of each other. They have an hour every day in our program, and then they go to all the other classes, and we call those classes our super powers. These kids are literally, in many cases, at a genius level. Genius in visual spatial, not in being able to process language. So give them a puzzle or give them Legos, something to design and build. These kids can do everything, anything with that. And this is what we look for as we're assessing. What can they do? What is her superpower? And where are they reading? All the children that we admit must be severe to profound, because these are the kids who struggle to the greatest extent in the schools, and we want teachers to see it. This part of the building is stunning. It is absolutely beautiful, and this is where you will see every aspect of Frank Lloyd Wright when you come to her. And again, we invite you to come anytime. Just pull up to the gate, tell us you'd like a tour, and we will meet you at the front door. We are currently involved with these universities for all of our classes for teacher accreditation, a master's program, and most recently we're working with paraprofessionals. So that is where Barclay College and then also Butler County, I don't even see it up there, we're working with Butler County and WSU Tech. So just a few things about dyslexia. This is the definition. Again, everybody, until kind of I educate them, thinks it's seen backwards. But it's a specific learning disability, was recognized in 1975 as such, that scientifically we now know that the neurons in the brain are organized differently. And it's carried on chromosome 6, as is ADHD. So this is where both are passed on through the families. Most of the time, the children who are severe to profound have ADHD as well. So the brain just says, I don't want to listen to you talk, I'm not going to, and then that compounds our instruction with them. So what we know is it's characterized by taking what is called the sound and attaching it to the letters. So remember the pastel letters I told you she had me trace? That was how I connected the shape of that letter to the sound. And she was teaching phonics, very disciplined phonics to me. Then encoding is taking that sound just when it's spoken out of the air and turning it into the letter and then being able to spell or put that sound on paper. So that's why we know it's a very complex system that in many people we call it neurotypical. Their brains are set up to do this. With neurodiverse, no, they are not. So this methodology in Dallas, Texas, helps teachers walk these children very specifically through what they need to learn to read, write, and spell. You've got to be able to do that to be an accurate reader, which is what we're after. And the accuracy comes before fluency, which means how fast you read. What I can tell you is dyslexic children never read fast. They do not. They read accurately, we can teach them that, but they just can't process it fast. So the fluency tests we put kids through, these children will never do well, but yet they can learn to read at a college level, but they need time to do that. So again, I just kind of reinforce that myth down there because oftentimes I find I'm correcting people with that. This is in the news just lately. I couldn't believe it when it was in the news on Monday. The scores that we know, the NAEP scores, National Assessment of Educational Progress, taken every 2 years. This is 4th grade. High school was reported on last Monday, and we have not seen reading scores that were reported on Monday at the high school level at this low a level since 1962. So we have a real crisis on our hand. A lot of that's COVID. We all experienced that. That just absolutely blew up a lot of what was going on in education. But Kansas, at this point in time in 1998, that was about the time I was getting involved. We were 7th in the nation, and we have now dropped down to 37th in the nation. So this is something I've been very focused on since we do know how to teach children how to read for all these years. So again, we've got a long way to go to bring us back up to where we were in 1998. And if you were to ask me, it's because we have not been teaching phonics. Phonics was basically Dick and Jane, the end of Dick and Jane. We had a very short period of time with No Child Left Behind where phonics was brought back in, and by 2006, gone. We were back to balanced literacy, which many of you know about, or maybe not, but it was kind of, here's the word, I'm going to cover the picture and the word, and then here's the first sound, guess. So we called it 3Qing, and that's really how we've been teaching kids for about 20 years. So it's very much explaining what's happened in Kansas, and we're not the only state. You can see all states are very closely tied there together. These were Kansas scores, the blue, what we knew for 4th graders back in 2011. And then our 2024 is, as the scores have worsened, this is below basic. This means children basically can't read. This by 4th grade. So you're seeing it disaggregated there. So right now, this is crisis. And what we can predict is those high school scores are going to even be worse here over the next 6 years, 6 to 7. I bring this because this was a project we were funded to do with Wichita Public Schools with the Barry Downing Foundation. Barry gave us a large grant. He built the whole concept. He wanted it to be in all of the Wichita Public Schools. He wanted us to train the special ed staff. We started with 13 schools at the beginning. The project ended the second year with, you can see over there, 84 educators in 259 in the elementary schools. These teachers were taught our program. They dove into special ed. He wanted the children pulled at the bottom 10th percentile. So you can see at the first of the year, those pre-testing scores that we did with the kindergarten children. And by the end of the year, how they grew. This was unprecedented. I had to send these scores down to Florida State University to tell me, what does this mean? And they were blown away. They said, this is not happening. So we knew. We had all these teachers bought in. They were loving this. Barry, at the end of this year, and let me go to the next screen too, this is where it compares to the national mean. These kids should not have met that national mean. The second thing this told us was we've got to get earlier into our schools. We've got to start this at kindergarten. And where most of our kids are not recognized, you guys, until like 3rd grade or 4th grade. So this is where we didn't even worry. We just took those all kids. We didn't know how many of these kids were dyslexic or not. So again, this was stunning to everybody. The second year that we worked with the kids, again, we saw big gains at the 1st grade levels, and then the same with the charts. By the time we were working with kids in 2nd and 3rd, they were already so far behind. We did not get these kind of gains. So it was a fascinating study. And we have known ever since we did this study that what we do works, and it works well. But it was phonics, and it kind of flew in the face of what we were doing in our public school system. So it was 3 years ago where we received a large grant from, it's called the Patterson Foundation. They are North Central Kansas. A foundation about as big as the Koch Foundation. And they only serve rural Kansas, though. So we came up with a plan that we would identify areas around Kansas that fell in those regions, and we'd set them up as what we're calling points of light. We invited teachers who raised their hands who said, I want to go through your training. The foundation paid for them to do that. They came to our center, trained. They went back to their schools. They worked with kids. They came the second year for second part of the training, have gone back to work in their schools with kids, and now next year we are ready to beam our program into every single one of these schools because we have a facilitator there now trained who can answer the questions, assess children, help the administration understand. So this is kind of what we're seeing as the future, not just for children with dyslexia across Kansas, but again, children who just struggle to learn to read, which you saw in my charts are many, many children. So I think that's the end.
It is 1 o'clock now, so if you need to go back to work or need to go, you can go. If not, we're going to answer a few more questions.
I'm a tear back. Your story is my story. I'm a disciple of Frank Lloyd Wright. I find there now.
Wow.
But I'm also profoundly dyslexic. And I've got a degree in engineering. Talk about cheating, I know.
You know how to do it. I know.
Most of these people will never recognize it from what they know of me that I have. I see the design of Frank Lloyd Wright. I see an eyeball. I just see a dyslexic eyeball. An eyeball has a defined nerve behind it that focuses to the brain. Dyslexic is all scattered before it gets focused. And that's what I see in that. That is so much speaks to me. And what my question to you, dyslexic to me is a challenge for reading. You talk about slow, yeah. Books are my enemy. I hate books.
Right.
I like to hear people, talk to people.
Right.
But dyslexic to me, I have so many, that's a curse. But my eyesight picks up on, I can find a needle in a haystack.
Right.
That's a dyslexic thing.
It is.
We can find stuff that nobody else can find. And do you emphasize that in your school and try to create, to emphasize that, to let them know that they have this capability? And like you talked about superpower. Yeah, I get it.
Yeah.
Thank you.
No, thank you. So yes, the science class, the art class, all of our kids go through music, drama, and performance, and they actually write them. We'll be doing a real exciting thing with our kids this year with Sonia Sotomayor has written a book, and she's asked them to perform it, so we're really looking forward to that. But you're right, our strength is visual spatial, and in almost every case, it's at the highest IQ you can be in visual spatial, and that's a gift that's given to children with dyslexia and was given to you. Yeah,
Okay.
absolutely.
Question right here in the middle.
Yeah.
Right.
Did I misunderstand you earlier? Did you say there is or could be a shortened longevity with these folks?
With children with dyslexia? Longevity as far as lifespan? No. Yeah. No, not at all. Now, as far as the damage that's done to these kids by not learning to read because they are so brilliant, a lot of these kids end up in jail. I have 3 students right now that I worked with in high school who are out at El Dorado. It's heartbreaking. We know suicide, we know drug abuse, we know loss of job. Yeah, so, but no. Yeah, that's not part of what I usually talk about. Yeah.
Okay. Right here, question.
Ma'am, to your knowledge, is there a relation between COVID-19 and dyslexia? If a pregnant woman gets COVID-19, the baby born will have dyslexia or not?
Let me repeat your question. So children born during COVID, do they have dyslexia or not? If you inherited it, and it affects 1 in 5. 1 in 5 of everybody around the world carries the gene for dyslexia. So if they have put their language to print, then that's when they'll struggle. If they have not, and there are very few cultures that haven't, but in those cultures, these are the go-to people. They can build, they can design, they do incredible things. And it's interesting because U.S. has slightly higher levels of dyslexia within our population, but it was because we were a penal colony that those individuals were sent to the U.S. Out of the prison system, and they hadn't done big crimes, but they were just sent out away from Europe. So we know that that's part of the reason that the U.S. has, and Australia, those 2 countries have slightly more cases of dyslexia.
Okay, another question?
Yeah, you too.
And so I wondered, because we have local board members in the room, if
Yes.
you could explain to them what we pass at you. They do have some tools that I think the state's provided for them, if I'm understanding correctly what we voted on.
Oh, yeah,
If you could
absolutely.
explain that to them and me, because I voted on it, but.
Yeah, no, and I appreciate your vote. Thank you very much.
And then the other thing is I'm sure we have state representatives in here, something that I've been asking Jeanine about, trying to learn more about. We have a reading crisis going on for our school for the deaf. And it just breaks my heart for those children because they're deaf. This is their world. If they can't read and write, it's the impact on them. They don't have the ability to compensate as much as hearing child would. So trying to encourage us legislators to let's be aware that the school for the deaf is needing help right now, and I think you're going to be key in helping a lot of those children. If you could explain to those school board members what you've gotten, what tools they have now.
No, thank you. And really for all of you, I traveled for 15 years straight to Topeka to talk to the Department of Education, legislators, etc., and kept explaining this. 2 years ago, a young man by the name of Rob Egan joined our board, and one day he said to me, "You need me, I can help you in Topeka get dyslexia recognized." I said, "What are you talking about?" He said, "I sit on the Governor's Disabilities Commission and I'm chair." And I said, "I do need you." So that was when we first were able to get dyslexia recognized as a learning disability in the state. Then I've continued to go to Topeka really, and I did, and and Gretchen made me do this, pushing to get on what is called the at-risk list for instruction. We were not on what we do, how we do it. The alphabetic phonics program was not registered on that list. So we did do that, and thanks to the State Board of Ed, yes, and getting us on that at-risk list. The second part then was meetings with the Commissioner of Education to get what is called the Seal of Literacy, which every teacher must have that seal on their license here in 2028, I believe. I'm setting the goal for 2027, but I think it's 2028. We finally received the seal of literacy, that those who go through our training automatically then will get this seal put on their license. So those have been two really big things that have happened to us to open the doors really for all these kids. And that's the bottom line. It's about the kids.
Okay, we got one last question.
Okay.
My son had a gap, when he went to Mays schools, and he had a gap from 2 or 3 years that he needed to have filled. And so I just want to make sure that you're able to teach those children as well to fill that gap so he can learn. He's not dyslexic. So you do other
We do.
programs as well.
We do. Yes.
What about kids who have already passed that elementary age, but, now are in middle school or high school? What do you suggest for them?
We, for years, worked with children. When we started, we said we would serve children from 5 years of age to 18. It was through training, though, so training the adults. We have a few who specialize in older children. For us, as I said, we've got to get it out there that we need to start younger. So that's a big focus at our center and with our school. But we train private therapists or tutors to do programs for the older children. It's never too late. The oldest individual I worked with was 76. He owned a paint factory and he never could learn to read. And he had a tutor he hired her, I think 20 years she had tried. So she contacted me and she said, do you have a program? I said, yes, we do. So she came and trained, and then I mentored her. So I got to watch him learn to read, and I was at his graduation party 18 months after he started. And it was amazing because his goal was to read the Bible, and that's what he wanted. So I was there when he handed the Bible to his wife and said, pick any page. She did not know. So she just went through, picked a page, handed it to him, and he read it. And I mean, there wasn't a dry eye in the house. So I say it's never too late. Anybody can learn to read. And we know 5% of the population cannot. It's just a neuro issue that they can't make those connections. So we do know there's 5%. But then to go to the numbers that you see, that we're dealing with today, there's no reason for that. So, yeah, good question.
Jeanine Phillips,
Yeah.
thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you. Thank you.